I found a bunch of samples of like the Windows, the old Windows sound effects, and threw them on a beat. Thought it was quite fitting for a lot of these intros. Hello, Juan. Welcome to the stream. Glad you could join. Alex, I'm a first timer. Welcome. Hope you enjoy. And catch us every week on Wednesdays. We stream at around this time. So right now it's about noon. So I don't know where you're from, but whatever time it is when we usually stream on Wednesdays. Martha, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon from me. Currently preparing for PSAA, going through the course. Awesome. That's great to hear. Best of luck in your journey. I hope you enjoy the course and hope you enjoy the exam experience as well. If you complete all the challenges in the course and if you have some good notes and documentation, you should be in a good spot there. Did you use AI to generate the song, or you had DJ skills? No, I did it myself. Yeah, I just grabbed a bunch of samples of Windows sound effects and then laid down some drums and some keyboards. Actually, I can show you. Got my keyboard here and threw that together one night when I was like waiting for something to render or something. I was just bored. But I think the background music you're hearing now might be AI generated. It's just like part of Restream, and I like to have some music in the background. Make a 50 hours course of pen testing. I think the PH is probably around close to that. And if you factor in some of the other courses on the Academy as well for pen testing, like the bug bounty course, the web hacking course, you'd easily over 50 hours. So even just on the YouTube page, I think we have posted quite a few pen testing courses. That's not my wheel set, so I'm not sure, but I know we do have quite a few like long form video courses on the TCM channel. When you go through a box, if I have TryHackMe, can I follow along on my own? Yes, you can. We're going to do, I'll throw it up on the screen in a moment. We'll hop in, but it's called Volt Typhoon. It's a free challenge on TryHackMe. So the link, I'll put the link in chat when we get there. And then if you have an account, you can sign up for free and just get started on the challenge. We can go through it together. Question from Sank. How is SOC 201 going? It's going, man. It's it's been crazy. There's a lot of other things going on as well. So it's just been trying to get everything polished and ready to go. It's just been a very busy quarter, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. Loving some of the print statements I see in chat. Hello. I can't respond in Python for you, sorry. All right. Let me throw up the actually, I think every time I pull up a question, it'll like overwrite this, but this is the box we're going to be doing today. You see the link there. The room is just called Volt Typhoon, and we're basically going to look into an APT group. And I think we're using Splunk to do some investigations, which we've done here before on the stream. So should be a good one. What's the topic? Yeah, so we're going to do a TryHackMe box. We're going to do an incident intrusion investigation. I think it'll be pretty fun. How are you? I'm doing all right, thank you. Appreciate it. How are you doing? Any threat hunting course in TCM? I think we'll probably do a dedicated one at some point. Maybe I will, maybe someone else will, who knows. But the SOC 201 has a big threat hunting, quite a few threat hunting modules as well in it. So it sort of kicks off the front end of the course. So if you do want to get that threat hunting fix, we will cover that when SOC 201 comes out in about a month, I think. And then maybe we'll do a dedicated one because there's some specialities, right? We could do like a network threat hunting course, because there's like it's basically an entire kind of subset of threat hunting, and there's a ton of different methodologies and techniques around that. So we'll see. Please, can you speak in Hindi because I don't know English? No, sorry, I can't. Apologies for that. What's the website? For the box, just going to be tryhackme.com. I'll throw a link in chat when we hop over. Tyler, welcome to chat, my friend. Welcome to the stream. Nice to have you. We're gonna get started in a moment here. We're gonna do a Splunk investigation on TryHackMe. So happy to have you here, and I'm excited. By the way, for those of you not aware, Andrew Bellini is our resident IoT specialist at TCM. He's going to be doing an interview. I think it's tonight, with Tyler Ramsey on his stream. So if you haven't subscribed to Tyler Ramsey, do so now. He's great. His videos are awesome. And so, yeah, there'll be a fun interview / conversation going on there. I'll have to get on one of your streams as well one of these days as well. Yeah, using Restream. This is very cool because these Typhoon rooms have threat model real scenarios that have happened. Yeah, and I think that'll come in handy for us. I think we'll probably pull up the MITRE page for Volt Typhoon and look at some of their techniques to help us out with some of the questions that come up. So I like these kind of rooms as well, where it's sort of based on real intrusions. And so that'll be fun. Yeah, there it is. So at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, I think that is. Check out Tyler Ramsey's stream. He's going to have Andrew Bellini on. And his AWS course is awesome. Alrighty, let us bring up the stream here. And let me also throw the link there in chat. And I think I've disappeared. So let me fix that. Alrighty, so we're going to get started in a moment here. So if you do want to follow along, yeah, the link should be going around in chat. I'll also throw it in myself just in case. And I would just get your machine spun up now if you want to follow along. And I think it should just take a few minutes to start up. I threw the link there in chat if you need it. And before we start, just a reminder that we do have some live classes coming up in the coming weeks. Next week, we're going to have our SOC Level 1 class. So if you do want to check that out, that'll be on Monday, actually. So it's coming up real soon. If you do want to get in to that class, be sure to register before then. If not, we'll have it, I think, every few months we'll be doing that class as well. So if you do miss it this time, be sure to hop in next time if you are interested. But that'll be next week. And I think we do have some more live trainings coming up in the coming weeks and months. So you can always just check the TCM Academy page for that. All right. Have a good one, Tyler. Thanks for stopping by. Always appreciate it. All right, let's get started in this room. So, Volt Typhoon. Investigate a suspected intrusion by the notorious APT group, Volt Typhoon. Why don't we do a search for them on the MITRE ATT&CK framework and get a better understanding of what we're up against here. So we can see they're based out of the People's Republic of China. They're sort of a state-sponsored APT here. And it looks like They focus on operational technology assets for more destructive attacks. So interesting. Why don't we take a look at some campaigns they've been involved in, right? So MITRE ATT&CK, if you're not familiar with it, haven't used it much, it's a great resource for us here. I think it's going to come in handy, specifically when we look at the techniques that they use, right? And so we can get a really good understanding of what this APT group likes to do in the wild, right? So in terms of local account discovery, right? You can see the actual commands that they are using, like queuser or net user, to basically enumerate local accounts. We can see different ways that they collect, some of their data for exfiltration, right? So it looks like they're grabbing the ntds.dit database and they're throwing that into a zip protected 7-zip archive, right? So again, some of this might come in handy as we sort of dive through our data here as we're tracking this adversary. And so if you haven't checked out MITRE ATT&CK framework, this will probably be a good resource for us. All right. So our scenario here, the SOC has detected suspicious activity indicative of an advanced persistent threat group, or an APT group known as Volt Typhoon, notorious for targeting high-value organizations. All right, so we have some log types here in our Splunk instance from a 2-week time frame during which the suspected attack occurred. So we need to research the suspected APT, which we've sort of started doing here, and understand how they maneuver through the targeted networks, and also test out our Splunk skills. So I already have the Splunk machine started up, so I've just connected to the VPN, start up the machine, and then we can access it on 10.10.5.98, whatever your IP address is. I think it's different every time. And then the port is 8000 for the Splunk web interface. All right. So I understand my duties and have started the virtual machine. There we go. First question. So it looks like we're sort of going through a bit of the MITRE ATT&CK framework here, right? Starting out with initial access, execution, persistence, defense evasion, credential access. So that's kind of fun. We're going to go through the entire attack chain here. So for initial access, Volt Typhoon often gains initial access to target networks by exploiting vulnerabilities in enterprise software. Right, so pretty common in terms of intrusions. In recent incidents, Volt Typhoon has been observed leveraging vulnerabilities in Zoho Manage Engine ADSelfService Plus, a popular self-service password management solution used by organizations. I don't know if I've heard of this before. It's going under a different name. AD Manager Plus. I don't know. Never used it. Interesting. So again, it's kind of like a self-service password management solution for enterprises. All right. Seeing some chatter in chat here. Sorry guys, I I can only speak in English for this stream. Maybe in a future stream I'll pick up some more languages, or we'll get some cool AI to translate in real time. But sadly, that's what we're dealing with. All right, initial access. So comb through the ADSelfService Plus logs to begin retracing the attacker's steps. At what time in ISO 8601 format was Dean's password changed and their account taken over by the attacker? All right, so let's hop into Splunk in the search and reporting interface here. And I kind of want to look at, we weren't given a timeline, I'll just select all time. I kind of want to look at what data sources we have. Right, do we have like network data, endpoint data? Looks like we had some application logs here from this password management solution. So under sources here, so it looks like we're just pulling 3 different log files. So we have this ADSS, so this this application log. Looks like we have some PowerShell logs, so that might be interesting, and some WMIC command line logs. So we have actually quite a bit to work with from both the application and endpoint side. It would be nice to have some Windows security logs, maybe some system and application logs, but again, we're grabbing the app logs here. PowerShell, script lock, and module logging will give us quite a bit if PowerShell is used, and WMIC also. if we're dealing with some perhaps lateral movement or even just some local enumeration as well. We can get some interesting things from the Windows Management Instrumentation protocol. All right, so it wants us to target those application logs first. So why don't we just grab everything in the index. Again, we weren't given a time range here, so I'm just going to stick with all time. Not always best practice, but again, when we're just doing a box like this, we can take some liberties here and there. And then for the source, thankfully it's auto-completing here. So I'm just going to select this log file for those ADSelfService Plus logs. And I guess what we can do is just run a search, see how many we get. $666 events. That's not bad. If we were dealing with a ton of data, I might do some like event sampling, because what I typically like to do in my sort of workflow is take sort of a wide look at a source. So again, we're going through this log file. I just want to grab basically everything I can, not so I can start going through it line by line, right? That's going to take forever. But I might do some event sampling just to pull back a subset of the events, just so I can take a look at the fields that we extract, right? Because I've never dealt with this application before. I don't know what the log types look like. So I don't know what fields Splunk is actually extracting for us. And so just by doing a broad search like this, I can ignore the actual content of the logs and just focus on what fields we're returning, because ultimately that's what we need in order to perform more precise searches, right? So in this case, it looks like they're actually pretty simple. we don't even have too many fields here. So for instance, we have the access mode. So it looks like where the I guess password manager service was accessed from. So we have web browser in this example. The action name, so it looks like we have a password reset event. The IP address, so I'm assuming the source IP address of who triggered this event. Status, so whether it completed or maybe failed. The username of who actually triggered this request. And that's pretty much it, right? Of course, timestamp. But we don't have much to work off of, right? Looks like these are just standard sort of application syslog kind of events here. And so that's, it can be a good thing, but also a bad thing to not have much to work off of. But in this case, we're looking for Dean's password change. So we did see that password change event. So what I can do is go under, I think it was action name. And then, so now we're just aggregating the different values that we have in our data set. So you can see we have quite a few account unlock events, quite normal if this is a password manager service. But password reset, that's probably what we're looking into here. So I'm just going to click that to basically add it to our search. Just a very quick way for us to iteratively build up our search here. And specifically, I'm looking for Dean, right? Whoever this Dean user is. And so I can use the username field here and see if we have, so we have Dean admin. I'm guessing that's it. So fairly simple here, right? Just to initially sort of get this kind of thing going. All right. So we actually do have 7 events. Was that the only action? Was there a password change or a password reset? Let me double check. Yeah, so there's password reset and a password change, and this only has 2 events, so I'm assuming this is it. Because, yeah, what time was Dean's password changed in the account taken over? All right, so we have 2 events here, and what we could do is start to build up a table. Just for example, I'm sure this will come in handy later on. So I'll just use the built-in time field here so we get a timestamp. I can also build up, again, we have username, what was it? Action name, and I think status, right? So you want to know whether it failed or not. What did I, oh, call the table command. There we go. So out of our 2 events, it looks like they were both password change events, but one failed and one completed. And so if I want to hone in on this, I can just say status equals completed. There we go. So it looks like this has to be the event that we're looking for, right? So if we break it down, again, we have the administrator Dean account here, had a password change event, and the status was completed. We also get the IP address, so we might want to copy this down and use it to farther scope the intrusion, right? If we know that we can't trust this IP address anymore, or if we know that we can't trust this username anymore, we might want to sort of zoom back out and see what else did this user do, right? Or what else did this IP address do in the environment? And so it wants us to grab the timestamp in this weird format. I'm assuming this timestamp field is what we need, because we also get a built-in time, like this underscore time with Splunk, and this sort of like normalizes the time for us. I don't think that's what they're asking for, because they want it in this weird ISO format. There we go. All right, first answer completed. Let me go back up in chat here. Can anybody give me some ideas to take TCM Academy courses? I would suggest SOC 101. Why not? Depends what you're interested in. Never used Splunk, only Elastic. Yeah, I've used quite a bit of both. I prefer Splunk. I just feel like it's more user-friendly. And Elastic, if you're like standing it up on your own, it can kind of be annoying. A lot of things can go wrong. Splunk, fortunately, if you're using it in the enterprise, it can be very expensive, but it is, I feel like it's a little bit more stable and a little bit easier to get started with. All right, question 2. Shortly after Dean's account was compromised, the attacker created a new administrator account. What is the name of the new account that was created? All right. So we are kind of zoomed in on this Dean administrator account, right? So what I could do, in fact, I already have it there. Maybe I just want to see what other actions this Dean user did, right? So I can do a stats count, and I can just sort of aggregate it by the action names. Just to see if, what else this account did. Because, if we identified that the account itself was compromised, we can't really trust what it actually performed. So we have a number of account unlocks. We might not get too much information there in that regard, just because it's not really a management kind of event. It's kind of like, yeah, sure, you unlocked your account. The password change we already looked at, which is how we identified this account was sort of compromised. I guess we can assume it was, just because we had a successful password change, but I would want to sort of dig in farther to try to validate that. But in this scenario, we don't really have much access to other logs. Password reset, profile update, security question setup. Maybe not super interesting for us. So maybe it's not this specific account. I'm assuming they created a new account that we might want to look at. So what we could do is just look at all of the usernames, right? So I can just do another stats count by username. Basically take a look at all of the different users in this set of logs here. We see another admin account here, but I'd want to know when that was created. So what we could do, sort of set the username to that vultp-admin. And then I want to pull back those account created events, if that is a thing. I'm assuming it's one, like these all sort of relate to setting up an account. So let's do enrollment. And if we look at the timestamp here, we have 2024-03-24. So same day. And then we have 11-12-26. And the account was compromised at 11-10-22. So, that kind of timestamp there is a little bit suspicious to me. This happened right after the account was known to be compromised. So I'm assuming it's got to be this one. So that is vultp-admin. Cool. So now we have 2 accounts in scope, right? So any kind of actions after this timestamp from both the Dean account and any action from this new account I would be highly suspicious about, right? All right, what's the next question? We're getting on to execution now. So Volt Typhoon is known to exploit Windows Management Instrumentation Command Line, or WMIC, for a range of execution techniques. I can't read today. So they leverage WMIC for tasks like gathering information, dumping valuable databases, allowing them to infiltrate and exploit target networks. By using living off the land binaries or lull bins, they blend in with legitimate system activity. All right, so WMIC is, again, the Windows Management Instrumentation sort of built-in command line executable that's since been deprecated, actually. I think all the way back in 2016. I think they fully started removing it from Windows 11, but WMIC is sort of deprecated now. But what it can do is almost anything we want on Windows, right? We can query the local system's processes. We can query like registry activity, startup applications, stuff like that. We can also make changes to these things as well. We can also do it remotely across the network to other systems. And so if you think about it, it's like a lateral movement kind of dream for attackers, right? If they can sort of abuse that to their own advantage. It's kind of like just running PsExec across other environments. In fact, WMI exec, I think, uses the exact binary to do that thing in an attacker kind of way, right? So we also had access to those WMI logs. There we go. So this is probably what we're more interested in now. In an information gathering attempt, what command does the attacker run to find information about local drives on server 1 and server 2? All right, so let's just run our log here, see how many events we have. It looks like we have none. Did I spell something wrong? Maybe not. What about source type? There we go. Why didn't that work? Oh, the actual log name is different than what we saw earlier. Okay, we'll just use source. All right, and what I'll do, just while we're in sort of research mode here, is I'll go back to MITRE and see if we can find anything related to WMIC. And we can, right? So they've leveraged WMIC for execution, remote system discovery, and to create and use temporary directories. That's all we have here. And so what we could do is look at the references, right? So this is a good way to, again, understand APT groups and different adversaries and their attacks more, right? So for example, we could open up the Microsoft Threat Intelligence documentation here and see if we can do a search for WMIC. So it looks like they attempt to discover other systems. Where do we have it? Yeah, using WMIC and the ping command. Is that all we get? Yeah, so we don't actually have any command line documentation for that. But again, if we are researching this adversary, again, if we see something like WMIC, might be something we want to look out for if we're investigating this intrusion. So what command does the attacker use to run to find information about local drives on server 01 and server 02? So again, back to Splunk, if we're searching for the WMIC logs, what we could do is take a look at what fields we have access to, right? And immediately I'm drawn to command here, because that's probably going to be the highest fidelity kind of field we get in these logs. We get things like IP addresses, which is nice. Result. Why are we getting result? Okay. Again, timestamp, username. Are we still looking at the old logs? What's going on? Yeah, I guess so. But anyways, we get command here, which we can actually start to make sense of what commands were being run through WMIC, right? And so we can see the way WMIC works is that, again, we call the binary, and then we have these different aliases that we can use, right? So we have OS for operating system. We can query things like BIOS settings or printer settings, logical disk. What I don't see here is things like processes, which we can also query, just like running task list or PS list. We can see things like CPU or startup events, right? So we can very quickly enumerate like auto start entries using WMIC. So it's very powerful. But that's probably what I'm interested in. And specifically, we can target command. and we can set it to equal. It's asking us about server 01 and server 02. And so I can just do a search here, a wildcard search for a server, sort of nested in these asterisks like this to say, give me anything where the command has the word server in it. That might be a good way to narrow down here. And it looks like we have 9 events narrowed down to. So I can pipe that over to a table so we can see this in an easier way. And again, I'll grab the time. We can also grab the command. And then I can also sort that by the time itself. So we can start to sort of get a chronological view of what's going on. When we do that, now we're seeing the full command line values. We do see some interesting things here down at the bottom. So this is in sort of, what's it called? Descending, I guess. I always get that confused, but this is the earliest events going up to the most recent or the latest events here. If we wanted to reverse that, we could just throw a minus sign in front of time, but I kind of like doing it this way. And so it looks like it queried on server 02 and server 01. And so with WMIC, we can use the node flag here, the node switch, to run anything we want against another system or a set of systems across the network. Right. So with node here, it's basically querying these systems remotely. And so it looks like we're grabbing the host name of server 01 and server 02, running logical disk, I guess to get disk related information. And it's getting things about the file system, free space, size, volume names. So I guess that's technically a reconnaissance kind of command, specifically against those servers. But again, we also get a number of interesting things, like actually creating processes. And so it looks like it's running cmd.exe. It's running an xcopy command to grab this temp.dit file and putting it in the root of the web server directory, right? And then it looks like it's running 7-zip here with a password, this interesting password here, to password protect that file, and then also putting that in the same directory. It looks like it's renaming that then as this weird cl64.gif. So it's renaming a 7-zip archive to a GIF. And then it's setting another password here, running some more commands to basically set up some port forwarding. Okay, so we've clearly found some malicious activity here, but it's just a matter of what they're looking for here. So in terms of reconnaissance, I'm going to go with this guy here, because it looks like he's like querying different information about the file systems on the system. There we go. On this next question, we just answered, right? So the attacker uses ntdsutil to create a copy of the AD database. After moving the file to a web server, the attacker compresses that database. What password does the attacker set on the archive? And again, this is why you never really want to put passwords inside of command lines, right? If I'm running a command like net user or like whatever, right, and there's a password flag, you never want to do that, right? You always want to put it in a safer kind of way. Usually if you just don't put in a password, it'll prompt you for it. And so that's a safer way rather than putting it in the actual command line itself. And so the attacker in this case could have some better OPSEC going on. But it looks like we did identify the password for that zip archive. So if we get our hands on it, we can actually crack it and open it up, right? And see what exactly they managed to collect and exfiltrate. All right, moving on to persistence. Our target APT frequently employs web shells as a persistence mechanism to maintain a foothold. They disguise these web shells as legitimate files, enabling remote control over the server and allowing them to execute commands undetected. So, to establish persistence on the compromised server, the attacker created a web shell using base64 encoded text. In which directory was the web shell placed? All right. I know some low-hanging fruit ways to probably find this fairly quickly. I don't know if that's the intended way, but anytime I'm looking for web shells and we're dealing with an IIS server, which we can sort of tell based off of the sort of paths here that are being accessed, these sort of public root directories, we can always just search for sort of command executable file extensions in our data, right? So like ASPX or ASP, right? So that's probably one way to surface this fairly quickly. So what I might do is just look at any kind of source type we have here, because I don't know where this is going to show up, maybe in PowerShell logs. But I'm just going to search literally for ASPX. And we'll see if there's any files with that extension, to events. And it looks like they're from PowerShell logs. All right. So we have a command line field here that we can use, but it doesn't look to be very helpful. We do see certutil here, so that immediately makes me interested because, again, if you think about what certutil is used for, it can be used to download files onto a system, right? Sort of a living off the land technique there, to reach out to a server, download a file, and save it onto the local compromised system. But we also think about what certutil is used for. It can also decode, specifically from base 64, which is kind of what they're alluding to here. So I kind of want to see what this command is. And to do that, we might actually have to open up, this entire thing. So this is like PowerShell, sort of like script lock and module logging. We sort of have to open it up. I don't think Splunk actually, unfortunately, oh, maybe it did. So it did manage to sort of extract these fields here, but if you look at the command line, it didn't actually extract the entire command line. So that's kind of annoying, which means we can't really search off of it or aggregate it without doing some of our own sort of runtime extraction, which is kind of annoying. And I don't really want to try to start writing that on stream, because I'll probably look like an idiot trying to do that. But that just means we have to be more precise with our searches. And then we can open up a log like this and look in the full command line field, where we can see it's running certutil to decode from base 64 this antuser.ini file. And then it's placing that into the IIS start page, right? This .aspx file, to basically have that web shell functional and accessible sort of on the root of the web server. So this is sort of a classic kind of artifact here of a web shell being sort of put on the system in an interesting way, right? Using sort of that base 64 decoding. So which directory was the web shell placed? C Windows temp, right? Let's grab that. There we go. So I want to see what actually is in that file. See if we have an ability to see this here. So I guess what I can do is grab the original file name, this ini, and see if that was created, or see if we can get any kind of log around that. So I'll just do like a very broad search against all of our indexes, just looking for this antuser.ini, because it is kind of unique, right? There we go. So what are these? Yeah, these are PowerShell logs. So this one is what we just looked at, the certutil. The other command here immediately sticks out because this is PowerShell executing a long string of base 64, right? Actually, it's not executing it. We can see it's echoing it out. And that's how this web shell is being written, right? So it's echoing out this long string of base 64, and it's directing that into that antuser.ini file. And so again, because we have PowerShell logging available in this environment, we can see exactly what the attacker ran at the command line level. And so that's why it's always so important to have command line auditing, command line logging. A lot of organizations don't, right? It can be very noisy, but don't really have a choice anymore, right? With all these living off the land techniques, all of the different ways attackers are executing and writing things to disk or executing things in memory, we need to have some kind of command line logging in order to be able to track these things, or we'll be completely blind to what's going on. And so I don't know if it's asking for this later on, because we're getting into defense evasion, but I kind of want to see what this is doing. So I'm just going to copy that long string of base 64, and then we can hop over to CyberChef, right? Or we can, if we're running a Unix-based system, we can literally just echo that out. So I'll just paste in that long string of base 64, and that's just going to echo it out to the screen. But what we want to do, or what we can do, is just pipe that over to base 64 attack D to decode. And now we're getting what looks to be a web shell, right? So we can see, yep, so it's running cmd.exe. It's providing the C switch there to basically run a command. And then I'm assuming it's whatever we pass in. we get some indicators of what this web shell is. So we see AON ASP.NET web shell, and it has a form attribute here in HTML with the ID command and the post method, right? So if you were to make a post request to this endpoint with the CMD sort of ID, right? So in the post data, we could say CMD equals who am I? That'll sort of get executed by this command line instance here. And so classic example of a reverse shell. I'm sure if we search something like this is kind of a tell, we'll be able to even find the where this came from. As we can see, a Unit 42 article here. Yeah, let me open that up. Looks like we have the actual GitHub repository for it. I don't know if that'll open up. Yep, that's exactly what we saw, right? So this is likely where it came from. We even have some attribution here, right? Not necessarily to the attacker, but as to where they probably got this from. This Unit 42 article, if I do a search for here. Yeah, so this is just another example of an attacker doing this kind of thing. The command above used the echo command to write a large chunk of base64 encoded data into a file named cmd.txt. And then I use the, so this is exactly what we're seeing, right? The command then uses the certutil application to convert that base64 encoded data into an ASPX file. And so this time, in this scenario, they were targeting SharePoint folders, but we're seeing the exact same kind of technique used here. Very interesting. All right. So that was a little bit of extra research. I don't think it's actually asking us for that, but that was cool. Defense evasion. Volt Typhoon utilizes advanced defense evasion techniques to significantly reduce the risk of detection. Okay. So they first start by wiping the RDP records. What PowerShell commandlet does the attacker use to remove the most recently used record? Okay, so now we're looking into actual like anti-forensic techniques. So I don't know where this is located, but I do know there's sort of a registry entry that contains a list of previous RDP connections your system has made, right? I don't know if I can showcase it here because I'm sharing just the window, but if you've connected to RDP systems before, and if you open up the remote desktop app, yeah, I can't really showcase this, unfortunately, but you can. There's sort of a drop-down menu where it lists all the different computers or systems that you've accessed before. And so in this case, the attacker wants to remove evidence of sort of that lateral movement, and by wiping that list of, this drop-down that says, hey, you've connected to this computer before, this computer, this computer. And so by removing that most recently used record, it's a way to sort of get around that, at least from an endpoint analysis perspective, right? So again, I don't really know. We could probably research where that is. You just do a search for MRU because that's usually how Microsoft calls the most recently used in the registry. But we get nothing. Most recently used. Nothing. Let me wrap that in wildcards. Nothing. Okay. I'm assuming because that PowerShell log was so useful to us from a command line perspective, that's probably what we might want to target here. So let me change the source type to PowerShell. Only 400 events, it's not bad. And then I probably want to grab those command lines to see if we can actually make sense of, I'm assuming they might call like a reg command or maybe I don't know what they would do. So let's see. Is this in MITRE anywhere? No. All right, we might have to do some more research. But now we're just sort of getting a list of all the different commands that the attacker used. At least these start, right? So we can see the actual like PowerShell commandlets that were run. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we get much information after that. I don't know if that's just a limitation of how Splunk ingested these logs, or the sort of intake wasn't configured to get the whole command line value. So that kind of throws a wrench in things, unfortunately. But let's see if we have duplicates that we can remove. Let me try dedupe. Basically like running unique to only pull the individual kind of values, right? So actually, I think we have too many results here to make sense of. But we have registry path here as a variable. That's interesting. We have remove item property. That's what I was thinking about. So that's sort of a way we can run like reg delete, for example, using PowerShell. You can remove anything really, but you can also target registry keys using remove dash item property. So that might be something we want to look at. And also, I'm interested in this registry path variable here because I don't think that's built in. So let me do a search for that. We might have just gotten lucky with that. I might need to, nope, escape it. There we go. So we can see MRU here, and there's a 0 after it, which is why our initial search didn't match it, unfortunately. But what else are these? Registry path. Where does it actually set that variable, though? So we can see it's removing the MRU0 key from whatever this registry path is. I'm trying to figure out what... Oh, here we go. So this is the command where they actually set that registry path. Let me open that up. And so we can see the attacker ran in PowerShell. They just ran $registry path as a variable. And they set that to equal HKCU software Microsoft terminal server client / default. And so this is the registry key where those, I guess, the RDP sort of configurations are kept. And specifically within that, they deleted the MRU key there to basically remove that sort of forensic artifact that we could have used at the endpoint level to identify which systems this computer connected to. All right. What PowerShell commandlet does the attacker use? Okay, so they just used remove dash item property. The APT continues to cover their tracks by renaming and changing the extension of the previously created archive. Oh, we saw that actually. That's when they created the GIF file. Let me just do a search for GIF. Yeah, there we go. So they just renamed that archive that they were using to exfiltrate and collect, sensitive data, whatever it is. Actually, it was the ntds.dit file. And then they just renamed that to cl64.gif for whatever reason. To evade detection, who knows? Under what reg edit path does the attacker check for evidence of a virtualized environment? We could probably just look this up. But I guess we could also do a pretty broad search here. I just want to grab reg. Whoops. To see what maybe commands they use to query the registry. If they're using PowerShell, they probably use get item property. Yeah, and we can see in this case, they paste in the registry value, HKey, local machine, software, my app. I don't think that's it, but we can use that to our advantage. We can set command line to equal, is that going to work? Yeah, there we go. So we only have 4 events, which is not bad. So I'm looking for evidence of them checking for virtualized environments. We already looked at that. We already looked at that. Maybe not. Let me remove that. Maybe that was it. This is such a pain because, again, we're not getting the full command line value. So what I would typically like to do is like put this in a table or start aggregating it using different like stats commands and whatnot, but we can't because it hasn't been really extracted from these logs. So if I just go to command line here, we get like the base commandlet that was run, but we don't get the full command line value. And so I think that's just like a misconfiguration when these logs were ingested, which makes it harder. So that's not really going to work. Let me also do a search for, I don't know, virtual. At this point, I'm just doing like keyword searches. No. Get item property path. Yeah, okay. What is this? Get WMI object, virtual box. They're looking for a registry path. Okay, that's probably it then. Keyword search came to the rescue. I literally just searched the word virtual. And then we get this, where it looks like it's, yeah, so it's using get item property path to basically list all the keys and values from this path here, and then it's piping that over to select object to grab anything with virtual in the name. So it's using its own kind of keyword search, just like we did. So I'm assuming that's the path. Cool. That was a weird kind of question. All right, we're getting there in the attack chain. Let me check. Let me scroll up in the chat. See if there's anything quickly. We'll do some more Q&A after we finish this, but make sure everything is all good. Cool. Using Reg Query, Volt Typhoon hunts for opportunities to find useful credentials. What 3 pieces of software do they investigate? Okay, so we're given a command here, which makes our lives a ton easier. And so I'm just going to search for that. So I can say command line. I'll search against every source we have here. And I'll look for Reg Query. And I probably want to grab anything after that as well. Or not. Let's try Reg. There we go. Oh, that's why, again, because it's cutting off everything after the first word. Okay, so it looks like we do have some Reg queries, though, but we only have 8 events, which is not bad, but we have to go through them kind of manually. So in this case, yeah, Reg query is used to query the registry, right? So it's grabbing whatever the HKLM software, Microsoft Windows current version, and basically, what's the word? Grabbing everything under it. In this case, it's grabbing Dean admin's putty session registry path. So that's probably something here. So it's probably looking for credentials, honestly, right? From putty sessions, which is kind of like an SSH client, right? So I'm assuming that's one of them. Let me just throw that in there. What is this one? VNC server. So again, it's doing the same thing. Probably just to, again, grab credentials, right? And specifically, we're under credential access. So that makes sense. VNC server. Real VNC. Okay, same thing. And then open SSH. Okay. So that was pretty simple to do. Alphabetical order. That's definitely at the end. And then O comes before P. Right? No. That's in alphabetical order. Oh, it's real VNC. That's why. There we go. What is the full decoded command the attacker uses to download and run Mimikatz? Uh-oh. Running Mimikatz? Let's just do a search. Nothing. The attacker was too smart for us. They didn't just call it mimikatz.exe. All right. Decoded command. That makes me think that, again, maybe they're using some kind of certutil decoding. So I might want to look if any command lines contain the word certutil. We did see that one that was relevant in the previous question. And it looks like that's the only one we get. Okay. In that case, maybe we can target the PowerShell logs. Source type PowerShell. Because there's multiple ways to decode things in PowerShell as well, right? So we have the, for example, encoded commandlet. There's also several aliases for that as well, right? So we have just E, or I think -ENC as well. So I think either of these can be used to decode, say, base 64 and execute it, right? Or do something with it. So that's probably what I'm curious in at this point, right? So I'll grab the PowerShell logs, and then what I can do here in brackets is just basically grab any of these that might be interesting to us. And so I'll just throw these in quotes and separate them out with an or. So we can grab any command line that equals either of these kind of things here, right? And the reason why we have to do it in parentheses is because we're evaluating this as sort of a single thing, right? So we're saying this or this or this. Otherwise, it wouldn't give us the logic that we want. And we get an event, and it has base 64 in it. So I think we found it. So again, like the idea here is really just like look for that low-hanging fruit, right? In this case, we know the attacker used PowerShell. We also know that the encoded command line can be used to execute or decode or provide an encoded base 64 string to PowerShell, right? We also know that there are different aliases for encoded command. In this case, it matched off the -e here, right? So again, if we didn't think of that, we probably would have missed it. We can also kind of search for exec as well, right? So sort of these low-hanging fruit, common commandlets or flags or arguments or switches that are used in many of these intrusions, right? Also used for legitimate purposes, but if we see an administrator running -exec bypass, also running in a hidden window, and also using the attack E here to basically put in a base 64 string, right? I would be extremely curious about this. And so, benign or not, this is suspicious, right? This is literally an anomaly that we can find. And so, what is the full decoded command the attacker used to download and run Mimikatz? Again, we could hop over to CyberChef, for example. It's a lot easier to demonstrate in CyberChef than just using the command line. And so I'll paste in that base 64 string. And if you don't know why it's base 64, we can usually tell just based on the character set. Right, we have these capital and lowercase letters, just random garbled mess, right? But also the padding character at the end here, this equal sign, is pretty much a dead giveaway. So I'll just drag over from base 64, and we can see the PowerShell command that was actually run. Right, so this was passed into PowerShell. It was decoded from this long string, and this is what actually ran. So we can see invoke web request, pasting in the URI of this suspicious attacker server here that's hosting mimikatz.exe. So I would be very suspicious about this. This is now a network indicator that we can use and scope out across our environment. Part of the intrusion, right? We can see it was saved over to temp db2 mimikatz.exe. And so if we wanted to find that on disk, or if we wanted to look to see if this process executed anywhere, and it looks like start process was used immediately after that, right? So we have the semicolon here to basically separate those two commands. And so start process is just basically executing whatever we provide here, in this case, mimikatz.exe. And it looks like it's providing an argument list over to Mimikatz when it executed to run the securlsa to basically dump the LSA into lsas.dump here. All right, that looks pretty malicious to me, right? We also could have done this in the command line, right? So if I just echo out that string, let me grab it again. Actually, I think what I can do is just base 64 attack D and then provide. Nope. I think I need to echo it out first. There we go. So we're getting the same sort of output here, just in the command line if we didn't want to use CyberChef. Cool. So it wants the full command that was run. Let me grab that. And we're on to lateral movement and discovery. So the attacker uses wevtutil, a log retrieval tool, to enumerate Windows logs. What event IDs does the attacker search for? All right, so wevtutil is basically the way that we can interact with Windows logs in the command line. So we don't just have to retrieve logs using this, we can also clear logs, right? And so there's a ton of functionality with wevtutil. So all I'm going to do is just search for it, right? Because I assume it wasn't used a ton in these logs here, so we should only get a few events. And immediately, we can see that wevtutil was called with CL here, which is the clear option, just like I talked about. So this is how you can actually clear Windows event logs from the command line, assuming you have administrative access. And it looks like they're providing application logs, security logs, setup log, and system logs. So it's clearing all 4 of these logs. That's not the question, though. Is it a cleanup question? Yes, it is. So we've answered that one. Let me grab that. So this final question here, which we sort of skipped, is asking what are the 4 event logs that the attacker cleared. There we go. Okay, let's go back here. This is asking what event IDs the attacker searched for. So it's probably in this set of logs as well, right? Yeah, so WEVT util, QE is to query these logs or basically retrieve them. You can see it's pasting in, it's using the sort of weird syntax that it uses to basically grab, in this case, specify an event ID for the system log, and it's grabbing 4624. Actually, no, security log, but you need to provide, yeah, it's a weird syntax. We can see here it's querying the security logs. I was like, 4624, that's security. So that's what it's doing. What we could do is also just do a search for event ID, now that we know what it looks like. And we should limit it a little bit. So it looks like we have 4769. I think those are Kerberos ticket logs. Let me search that. Security, yeah. Security event 47. Yeah, a Kerberos service ticket was requested. It's also querying 464, so Windows login events, right? An account was successfully logged on. And what's the third one? Already saw that. Already saw that. 4625. So an account, that account failed to log in. Sort of the pairing to 4624. All right. Increasing order by separated by a space. That's what we have here. 4624, 4625, and then 4769. Cool. Moving laterally to server 02, the attacker copies over the original web shell. What is the name of the new web shell that was created? Didn't we see that as well? The original web shell was, what was it? Something.ini. I think. Well, I guess the original one was that ASPX file. Let's do a search for that. Yeah, we have 2 events. So this one actually decoded it and saved it to isstart.aspx. This one copied the item, so it copied that web shell, and the destination was set, we can see the UNC path here, was set to server 02. So it moved it from, I guess this is server 01, over to server 02, and it called it in the inet pub, so the public sort of root website root directory for this IS server, and it called it auditreport.jspx. Excellent. We're so close. Oh, we're so close. 2 questions left. All right. The attacker's able to locate, so we're on collection now. The attacker's able to locate some valuable financial information during the collection phase. What 3 files does Vault Typhoon make copies of using PowerShell? Wow, we just saw how the sort of commandlet here, the copy item commandlet in PowerShell. So that's going to be my indicator here to search off of, right? So I might want to see which PowerShell logs. So I can do source type equals PowerShell and just basically grab command line contains some version of copy item. Yeah, so we just saw that one, but we're looking for financial information that was copied. Browser backups, I mean, that's technically something I might want to be interested about. So what it's doing here is basically grabbing files from the system and then saving it out to this temp folder. It looks like it's creating different directories for whatever it's collecting and enumerating through. So it looks like it's grabbing all the profiles from, in this case, Edge. We have Firefox, Google Chrome. So it's trying to basically grab all of the sort of juicy user things to find. Now it looks like we're getting into financial documents, right? So we have Finance Backup 2024, saving that to this F audit or financial audit folder that the attackers created, and is just calling it 2024.csv. So there should be two more. Yeah, 2023.csv and 2022.csv. It looks like it might have mounted a share called backup directory. Yeah, so there's a ton of interesting things that I don't think were covered, but was still part of the intrusion, which is fun because it means there's sort of replayability, right? We can dig into this farther if we wanted to. So 2023.csv and 2022.csv. That means we have one question left. To cover their tracks, blah, blah, blah. The attacker uses NetSH to create a proxy for command and control communications. We saw that as well, right? So this should be an easy one. When we looked at all of the command lines the attacker ran, let me try to recreate that. I forget what our exact search was, but I think all I did was just aggregate the command lines. Actually, I think we did a bit more than that. We looked at, I think we searched for server. We're getting somewhere. So I remember there was that strange, we did see NetSH being run, and it was doing some sort of port forwarding, I suspected, based on our initial look. But where was that? I think we looked at the WMIC logs. And then we looked at command line. Oh, it was command. That's why. Okay, stats count by command. And I think we also, okay, so I think we're getting it here. So again, we saw this where it, this is it actually. Yeah. Yeah, so we saw when it grabbed the temp.dit file, it zipped it up, password protected it. And then we see some of that web shell activity, renamed the file as a GIF. And then it looks like here, it is calling NetSH here to basically create that sort of port forwarding going on, right? Or a proxy for command and control communications. So what connect address and port does the attacker use when setting up the proxy? It looks like we have the listen port. Oh, here. Connect port 8443 and connect address of 10.2.3.1. All right. I think we've just finished it. Nice. That was a cool challenge. Good job. All right, yeah, that was fun. Let us get back to the chat now. Apologies for not looking at it too much during the challenge there. I sort of gotten into some of those some of those later questions. It was kind of a grind. But let's see what we have in terms of questions. I need to catch up with the chat. All right. Is this digital forensics? Not really. We were more so just doing an investigation. We were using Splunk, so it was more so log analysis, I guess you could call it. Yeah. Nothing too forensically related. We looked at some forensic artifacts that were logged. You know, things like the registry values that were cleared for defense evasion, stuff like that. So, you know, forensics is part of any kind of thing we do, but traditional sense, that was more so just log analysis. How can we work with the Splunk instance? So this is just on TryHackMe. You just spin up the machine and you can connect to it. Sorry, I didn't see that at the beginning or whenever you asked that. But if you do want to rewatch this or go through it yourself, yeah, the link is there. Where do I find realistic vulnerable machines? The more recent vulnerabilities, the better. I mean, TryHackMe has like recent, they have like a recent threats kind of, I guess, path. I don't know what you call it, like a section that you can go down where they, you know, if there's a big CVE, they usually put together a room on it, for example. What is the other one? Is it VulnHub? Yeah, VulnHub, I think. Just look that up or Google that. You can download some VM images that are built to be vulnerable, right? How difficult is machine? That was a medium one. And it said 90 minutes to complete. What do we do it in? Just under an hour, I think. So not bad. What's your take on time allocation between TryHackMe and other platforms such as Hack the Box or CyberA? I'm particularly interested in hearing about your experience and what combinations you found most effective. I've never used CyberA. If they have blue team stuff, I'll check it out. There's free stuff we can do on streams. But when I was first starting out, I did a lot more TryHackMe than Hack the Box. As I got more into the blue team side of things, I find that Hack the Box has some more, like their Sherlocks are a little bit more engaging, at least in my opinion. But that's not to say there isn't great things you can find on any platform. It's just a matter of what works best for you. Like I don't think there's like learning outcome wise, I don't think you're going to lose out on whatever you choose. Like every platform out there has some great rooms and great practice. But I only really do stuff on stream these days. Like I don't go out doing CTS or boxes too often anymore. But when I was studying for the OSCP, for example, I was hitting a lot of TryHackMe rooms, a lot of the OffSec rooms as well that they give you in the labs. So that's probably the best way that I learned that kind of side. I forget what they called it in OffSec. It was like when you have the training, they give you the range that you can use. It's all a blur now. Why did the attacker enumerate the event IDs? Yeah, that was interesting. I assume maybe they're just trying to see what they left behind, because we noticed that they cleared the event logs afterwards. So maybe they're trying to see like what actually was being logged or whatnot. But why it was in lateral movement? Yeah, I'm not sure either. I feel like that would more so be around defense evasion and be part of the log clearing itself. Yeah, interesting. Or maybe they were trying to look at past event logs to see what systems this machine connected to. I'm not sure. There's a couple ways you could think about it. Have you checked out the TH simulator yet? Is that a threat hunting simulator? Is that a TryHackMe thing? I know they have the SOC simulator. Is that what you mean? In which case, I have not, actually. Why does my Splunk instance not work as yours? How are you starting it up? I'm just using the TryHackMe one. It should be the exact same image that we're using if it's on TryHackMe. If you're using your own like local instance, it depends on what data you're ingesting. If you're working with Sysmon data, for example, you probably need to install the Sysmon add-in so it can actually extract and parse those logs correctly. But depends. Are there any open source free SIM that people recommend? Yeah, I always recommend either Splunk, the free trial, if you're just sort of getting your hands dirty with SIM and log analysis work, or the Elastic Stack, which you can, there's a ton of tutorials out there to basically deploy it yourself. You can do it from a Docker container, which makes it a ton easier. Yeah, there's plenty of different options out there. You can even look at Wazoo or Waza, Security Onion, there's a ton. But if you're interested in this kind of thing, just get started with anything. I would suggest Splunk just because you can just download a binary and have it running within 20 minutes. So it's very, very quick. There's a thrunting sim on TryHackMe. Let's take a look at it. Let me pull up. I didn't know this was a thing. That's cool. Let's see. Threat hunting simulator. Uncover hidden threats and expose blind spots with real attack-based training. That's cool. I have not heard about this. Maybe I'll check it out on the next stream. Okay, yeah, so it's kind of like the SOC simulator one that they had where you sort of dropped into a Splunk instance. I'm not really going through this in detail, but maybe we'll check it out if it's free. I don't think I have a TryHackMe subscription anymore. But that's cool. Nice to see some innovation going on in the cyber range space. Um, Newbie here. Is it necessarily to pick a team, or can I do a red team or a blue team? Yeah, man, you can do whatever you want. It's probably, for job wise, you probably want to go down a certain path so you can get the skills needed for whatever role you're trying to go for. But there's no, you don't have to pick one or the other for any particular reason. But I would suggest you do sort of pick a path that you are interested in, so you can sort of build up that that 5-year plan, and figure out what what training might I want to go for, what study resources, or what kind of practice should I get. But in terms of like which one you should go for, whatever you are drawn to more. All right, I wanted to go into like penetration testing, and so like went down the OSCP track and did all that, but I didn't really enjoy it. Right, I was like, it's more fun doing threat hunting, in my opinion, or forensics, and sort of the blue team side traditionally. So that was more what spoke to me more, right? And that's what's going to keep you enjoying what you're doing, because it doesn't stop, right? You always have to learn. So if you don't enjoy what you're learning, you'll probably burn out very quickly. Elastic is a pain and a half. Yeah, it can be. Ever since I went the Docker container route, though, it just became a ton easier. What is a better for CTF, like challenges, TryHackMe or Hack the Box? There's no really better, in my opinion. I don't get too hung up on what to go for. I enjoy them both. All right. We are coming up to the half hour now. So I think we'll wrap it up, see if there's any other questions. But before we hop off, just a reminder, there's the SOC live training next week, if you are interested in that. It starts on Monday, so a few more days to register for that, or I'm sure it'll come around again in a few months. So just wanted to drop that off before we part for the day. Let's see if we can answer any more questions before we hop off. Isn't it possible to keep the chats for live recordings? Yeah, so the stream itself will be on the TCM YouTube channel, and there's a live chat section as well. So you can always rewatch this as soon as we finish off here. So, yeah, you'd be good to go. You can always watch the old streams. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. That was a fun box. If you did manage to not catch it, if you came in late, again, feel free to watch the playback on the stream on TCM YouTube channel. But that was a fun little box there. So apology if I didn't get to your question. You can always drop it in the Discord if it's anything super pressing. But I will be on another stream, I imagine, shortly. So thank you all for coming. See you next week. We'll have someone new, someone else streaming next week, because I'll be in the live class. So thanks, everyone.